Thanks for joining. The purpose of today's webinar is to show you guys the new maturity model, the enhanced version of the extended version of the maturity model. But we would also like to give you a kind of reasoning why we've built it. And we also want to give you a way to move forward from here. So this is the first step of building something into our platform. This will allow us to extend the capabilities of the platform greatly. And that's what we would like to give you an insight to after I show you the details of the maturity model related functions that we released last week into the system. So I'll start by handing over the microphone and the control to Rob to give us a bit of a context of what the atomic model is and why we felt we need to make this step of extending the model. And then after I show you guys the details of the model itself and how that's been extended, I'll pass back the control to Rob to give you guys that insight to the future. So Rob, over to you.
Thanks very much, Sultan. So I'll be very quick about the intro bit, because really it's a lot of people involved with the AX have seen what we're going to go through anyway and understand it. So for those that haven't, we have Mike. Okay, so just the background of what we're doing really. Now this diagram really explains a little bit about our roadmap in general in theoretical terms. So I'll just quickly spend a bit of time on that. Now, what we're looking at really, I think, in the consultancy market today is there is a progression of systemization, as we called it, in terms of how you automate consultancy, and that's being driven by demands from clients to want faster consultancy, lower cost consultancy, but also the AI is driving this increased systemization in the market. So this is our model to say, okay, well, what does that actually look like if we looked at this on a scale? So today, I think, level 1, level 2 is where consultancies are generally, that's very manually based, framework based, etc. But if you look to the future, we're going through productization, increasing productization. We're also, we think, moving towards this outcome-led consultancy. And then if you project that forward, there's this consultancy as a system area. Now, what's really happening, I think, with AI use at the moment in consultancies is that it's anchoring consultancies really at this manual level. These are individual consultancy tools that people are using for individual consultancy productivity gains. What we see really is the market, though, is pushing towards how can you deliver outcomes within consultancy, how as a firm, as a consultancy per se. And then eventually, really, one of the things that people need to be concerned about in terms of strategy is how you move to this consultancy as a system. This is happening in the marketplace. It might be a year away, it might be 2 years away, but eventually there's this increasing automation. So that's really what we're working against really in the marketplace. So our view really is that it's not about individual LLMs and individual productivity. It's about how you can systemize this AI layer within a firm. How can you make that embedded in what you do to provide benefit and scalability? So that's really what we're working on as the big picture. And we'll return to this more. We're going to have a webinar on the 30th of this month where we're going to talk about this subject in a lot more detail. But this is just really positions what we're doing. So this systemization layer is about what lives in a consultant's head at the moment. How can we take that from the consultant's head and how can we put that into a system, the AX platform, and deliver that? And that's the piece that we've started with the new releases around the product book, which Sultan will come back to. We won't worry about this too much because that's our roadmap side. Now, the bit about the architecture is really important because this explains what we're doing in the product book. So if we just position this before we look at it. So the fundamental thing that we're talking about is capabilities, and capabilities, as you increase capabilities, deliver the outcomes for clients. That's the connection. So in effect, what you've got in a maturity model is capabilities. That's where we started. Your actions then are all designed about how you improve capabilities to drive outcomes, and then KPIs are about measurement of those. There's also symptoms, which you'll find in the new maturity model. Now, symptoms indicate what your capability level is. So if you look at the symptoms in an organization, we're suffering from this or we're suffering from that. That's all about understanding that they've got capability problems. And observable evidence is what you see in an organization to show that they've achieved a level of capability, as well as asking people, do you do this and do you do that? What's the evidence? So that is really fundamentally what we've built into the product book now. We built this model so the AI within the platform can start systemizing, which we'll talk about in a second, what a consultancy does. And the outcome elements, the outcomes cards and the KPIs in the product book all connect back into what we've done with the maturity model to create this data picture, this ontology, as you can call it, of how knowledge fits together. And then once the AI understands that, that's when it can really execute the systemization of decision making, which I showed you earlier. So that's really just the background of what we're doing and the concepts of how it fits together. It creates a really powerful model, and we'll show you, firstly, like I said, Zoltan will show you the product book and explain how that works. And then we'll flip back and give you a taste of what we're going to be doing about executing that layer in the actual workflows. Zoltan, back to you.
All right, thank you much. I'd like to just stay on this diagram for a very little moment, because this is what I will then show you guys in the product book, and this is what we started to build out in the product book. So if you remember, the outcomes and KPIs were already added to the product book, and now we're extending the capabilities with all these other bubbles that Rob has on the image to make sure that we have an extended knowledge about what the capability is, what is the sign of the capability, and as such we can then use it for downstream activities such as assessment creation or discovery projects and other stuff. Right, let me share my screen. Okay, I have a model that I've built with the previous version of the system, because what I want to show you today is not only how we extended the model, but also how you can then extend your own models that were built with the previous version of it. I hope you can see my screen. Okay, so what you see, this model is about scalability, so organization scaling. And what I have here is the typical 5 levels of maturity, and I have categories and dimensions in it, so that I have a full model that I can extend now. Just to set on some terminology, because I will need to refer to various parts of the model. The level definition is still a level definition. The category definition is still a category definition. And these ones in here, I will call them cell definition, because as you will see now, even the cell definition is extended. So it's good that I can point to this is the cell definition and this is the category or the level definition, right? You can also see some nice hints on the model, and I'll come back to that. Some of them relate to the priority or the importance of those categories in the levels. Some of them are related to the readiness or the digestion phase of the maturity model, but I'll come back to that first. What I would like to do is to go through the definitions, how they've been extended, and how you can extend your own model easily using AI and then just curate the AI generated content. Right. So first, I would recommend you guys to always work on the level definitions as it was before. When you went through the wizards, you first approve the levels, and then the category breaks down the level to that category itself. So I would recommend you guys to follow that same pattern. If you click on this level definition, it opens up we call it workbench. The workbench is where you can work with your definition, whether it's a level, whether it's a category, or whether it's a cell definition. We call that demo workbenches here. What you see here is the level definition for level 1. I have the maturity description, which is what we inherited from the previous version of the model. So that's what you will have in your model. And then you have other information here that we will need to use to extend it. So the short description is just something that can go into an external documentation for business audience. You can work with that when you create your document template to say that this is what you want to give into a quick review of your model. So this is a shorter version of your maturity description. We use the maturity description when AI is trying to generate other content, but you can always refer to the short description as a quicker way to explain people what level 1 is about or what the category is about. The further information, however, is anything useful you want to note to AI so that AI extend its knowledge about what this level 1 means and why it's important, why it's not important. And we've also added the generate button for all the cells, because the way I would do that if I were you is to ask AI to generate, as usual, to do the, I guess you all know my 80-20 rule about 80% will be done by AI, and then you just need to curate it rather than write it for yourself. So these generate buttons are there to help you with creating the content for the extended maturity model. As you can see, it shortened the description that I have on the maturity description, and it also gave me some further information, but these are all for you guys to curate and make sure that it reflects your knowledge. Because if you remember Rob's first diagram about the maturity levels, level 3 is where your IP is codified. So this is really the point where we codify your knowledge and your IP into the maturity model with all the aspects of it. Okay, so we have short description and further information, and then we have signals. So what are the indicators that suggest that this organization is a level 1 maturity, and what is the evidence that we could use for that? So these are things that you can add or remove as you want. We can also ask AI to generate some default set that it understands based on its knowledge. But these are all things that you know. So if you look at an organization, if you look at some documentation, what is the evidence and what is the indicator that you would look for if you didn't have the assessment upfront to find out that, yeah, it's a hint that this is probably the right level of maturity for this organization. And you can remove any that you don't like from the AI generated, and you can add some that you want to add, because based on your knowledge, these are typical indicators or evidence of this level, right? The next one is the comparison. This is something that before that AI was just generating automatically when we did an assessment. So how can you go from level 2 to level 3? The concept of this extended maturity model also means that we bring the AI generated logic into the model itself, so that instead of just you generating it into an assessment or a report, you can see it here, curate it here, and then the system will use it when it actually generates an assessment. So the recommendations that the system will give will be relying on these pre-curated information about how you can go from level 2 to level 3 or level 1 to level 2, level 2, rather than AI creates it on the fly, and so you have less influence on what the content will be. Obviously, because I'm in level 1, I can't generate a lower level transition, but I can see how I would go from level 1 to level 2 by the AI, and then I can curate it. Categories and dimensions. What we also found talking to the clients is that not all categories are equally important in a certain maturity level. So some are more important for later stages, like process documentation is a typical one, while some are more important in the initial phase, like ownership of tasks or regular reporting or regular review of the progress or anything like that. So what you can do here is to kind of prioritize the categories and the dimensions in your model. And also you can give AI an understanding of why at this level it is important or not important. Again, something AI will use when it works downstream on the assessments and when it creates you the reports and the assessment results. Okay, and again, as usual, I can ask AI to generate a version of it. Okay. The final tab here is the assets. So what you can do is you can also upload to AI some things that are supporting this level of definition. So for example, I'll have an asset that I've prepped for the categories, because you can upload it for the categories as well. So anything that you think would be a supporting document describing more about this level, or giving AI more understanding of why it's important, or actually just giving some templates that you will want to use later to provide to the client about, okay, so if you're on level 1, these are the typical task lists that you want to take away and use it. Right, so that's practically a workbench for a level. And what you see here that we've added is the status of this workbench, if this definition. Previously, we only had to state of any maturity model cell or definition. One of them was the logged, the other one was the not logged. And we've decided with this extension to also extend the statuses. You have the definition not complete, which means that some definition is missing from the model. And you have the to be verified and the validated. The to be verified if you create a first version, but you want a second pair of eyes to have a look at it, or you want to come back tomorrow and review it. So you can make that note that it's to be validated. The validated means it's baked, so it's ready. And you will find one more. If you create a new model using the wizard, it's the AI generated. So what that means obviously is that AI generated it, but no one actually curated, no one verified it. And then you can manually set it to verified when you feel it's ready to be used. Okay, right. And of course, because I do saves on the definition, it will ask me the usual question, do I want to now regenerate the related cell definitions? Because I've mainly changed the definition of the level definition itself. I will just keep it for now because I don't want that to happen. Okay, so that was the level definition. Now, a very similar workbench will be opened for the category as well. So if I open it, on the overview tab, I see the maturity description. That's what we inherited from the previous version. We can have a short version. We can have the further information. And then what you have is common failure modes and symptoms of low maturity. Now, because we're talking about a category, so a capability, a subject within the model, obviously, this is about so if this capability is not present or it's very low, what are the typical failure modes of that? And what are the symptoms? Okay, so how can you fail in this category and what are the typical symptoms you could say if this category is failing or on a very low maturity? So again, you can ask AI to generate some content for you and then you can curate it, or you can start adding yours if you don't want AI to give you any hint for that. The next tab is the dimensions. Obviously, if you selected a maturity model with no dimensions, this tab will be disabled. If you have dimensions, then here you can add new dimensions, and you can also jump into a dimension definition. The dimension definition itself has a workbench similar to the category, because obviously it's just a breakdown of the category itself, so it has the same information that a category workbench would have. Okay, the third tab here is assets. The same way as I explained with the level definition, you can upload documents or other files like an image supporting the category definition. So for example, I will just add one file here that I've prepped in my download files. Okay. All right, it will just open the usual discussion window, and there you go. I have this operational bottleneck, which is practically a general description about this category, but it's a much more extended version that I can give to the clients as part of an assessment or as part of a detailed proposal if you want. So yeah, I can use it, and every document can be said, okay, it supports all the levels, or it just supports some levels. So for example, if I have a document curated about what happens if operational bottleneck is on a low maturity, then I could say I will always only assign it to level 1 and level 2, because on a higher maturity, that document is not really valid. So I can do that. And the last one is the maturity model, the maturity level. So these are practically the cell definitions from the system. Okay, so I can open it through the category, but I can directly open it from the level definition as well. So for now, I will just close this, show you what we're talking about. Okay, I won't ask for the regeneration. Okay, and now I will jump into this one. Okay, so a cell definition, that's practically the level 1 definition that we've seen in the category. And what we have here, okay, is a regenerate with AI button, because what you can do is that instead of asking AI to trigger the regeneration of the whole row or column when you work on a category definition, you can elect, as I did, to skip the regeneration, and then you go through level by level and you generate these cells by yourself rather than asking AI to do everything at once. This way you can avoid, again, this kind of, I don't want to regenerate level 3, I only want to generate level 1 and level 2, and the others are fine already. So that for that scenario, we've built into this regenerate with AI. As you can see, it also has its own status because the cell itself is something that you can curate separately. And what information you have here is the maturity description inherited from the original model, short description and further information, the same that we had on the category and level definition stage. Here you can have the difference from lower level and difference from higher level. It's practically the same concept that we had on the level definition, but now this is talking about this category. So you can be much more specific about how can you go from level 1 to level 2 in this category rather than talking about the generic concept of moving from level 1 to level 2 in a model. Okay, and what is really important and really useful, I think, going forward, you can add the how you can do it steps, which I think will be sometimes quite custom to a consultancy. So, for example, level 1 to level 2 implement or an ITSM system or anything like that. So AI will never come up with that suggestion as a generic suggestion, but this is where you will have your own custom advice to the clients, and you can add that very specifically to each level where you think it's applicable. Okay, I'll just ask AI to generate some things, and also evidence of progress. So if you're moving from level 1 to level 2, what would be the evidence that you're now past level 1 and approaching level 2? So if all those evidence is there, probably you are close to level 2 or you're actually level 2. So you can also add those ones. Okay, and you can also
Zoltan.
Yes. Yeah.
So how you can do it will never be visible to the client, correct?
Yes. Unless you put it into a document and then you share it with the client. But everything you do, maturity model is an internal thing, right? So you will never have access to that from an external source. Okay.
Thanks.
And the last thing on the cell definition is the asset. So you can specifically upload an asset that only supports that one cell. Okay, and then use it for the AI. Okay, I save it again. And I don't want to regenerate. Okay, so this is practically the definition updates that we had. So as you can see, we've extended the knowledge a lot. And the main reason for this is that now we will be able to rely on this enriched information from the model when we generate assessments, when we create reports, when we create analytics. So we will gradually build this into a lot of processes in the system as we move forward. Okay. And before that, just before we talk a bit more about where you will use it, okay, just some other things that you will witness on the screen. So the first thing is that you see these indicators. It just guides you, okay, what is the status of this definition or cell? The second thing is this priority. If you remember, when we did the level definition, okay, I can actually open it. When we did the level definition here for each category, you can tell whether it's critical, high, medium, low, or not applicable to this level. And based on that, you will see that indicator on the screen. So let me just show you. So now I set this to medium. Okay, so these are indicators for you. Okay, and then the other thing that I wanted to talk about a bit is the version control, because with this extended model, we felt the original versioning model that was already stretched a bit, and we found its boundaries. We felt that we need to introduce a new version control with this one. What we figured, the typical use cases for working with a model, there are three. The first one, you work with that and then you figure, actually, that's wrong. Let's go back to the last saved version or the last version we had in the system. So that's practically the discard all changes that I had. That goes back to the last version that was created in the system. The second one is the activate as a new version. That's the function we had before in the system. So if you feel there was a major change in your model, you added categories, you added levels, or you removed, or you had a major rework on the category definitions, then we suggest you create a new version, because that influences how you can then create assessments and reports downstream. But what you also have now as an option is the save to existing version. Okay, and if you save to an existing version, that means that the existing version that is already linked probably to some assessments and documents will be updated. So those assessments and documents will still rely on the version that you have in the maturity model, but still you can do your minor updates. So typically typos, typical just add another a sentence to the category definition without regenerating the model. So all these smaller changes, you can then update it on the current version rather than creating a new version and then create a new set of assessments and set of documents and everything in there. Okay, so that's practically the version control. And the last thing I wanted to talk about today is previously you had here an edit category and an edit level button. And now the question, how can I add the new category? How can I delete the new category? And that moved into this modify structure button. The modify structure button actually has now three things. You can work on the categories here. So you can add category or remove category. You can work on the levels the same way. So you can add or remove levels and then open the workbench to then work on that to extend and put all the information in. And the third thing that I wanted to talk to you guys about today is that, again, talking to a couple of clients, the maturity model gets really big with like 11, 12 categories and dimensions into it and all this bit. So it's really hard to explain it to clients. So we decided to add another layer on the maturity model above the categories, and this is what we call topics. So the topics are practically grouping of the categories so that you can easily explain it easier. It will become easier to explain it to not really involved audiences. So rather than you say these are the 12 categories of my knowledge, you say these are the 3 topics that I have, and within these topics these are the categories and then the dimensions that we discuss. Again, you can use AI to come up with a topic recommendation, or you can do it yourself. And if you have topics, you can work with them. Let me just show you. So at the moment I have 7 categories, and it merged it into 4 categories, but I would say, yep, I don't think we need 4, we just need 3, and then you can associate each category to a topic. Okay, so we can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We have now 2 categories. Okay, so we have 2 on strategy, 2 on workforce, 2 on operational, and 1 unassigned, because this is where I deleted the topic that it was associated to originally. So I just associate it to the strategic, and therefore the strategic now has 3. Okay, and also you can say, I want to edit this topic and add some details. What's the name? What's the short description and the long description? Okay, so this is an additional layer to present your model. And again, this is something you will be able to use when you explain your model in a document, or when you refer to your model somewhere in the document in a system. This is all something AI will know and will use going forward if you elect to do so. Right?
So 2 quick questions.
Yep.
You got there with the upper right hand kebab, correct?
Sorry?
You got to the topics, etc., in the upper right hand kebab.
I'm not sure I understand.
How did you navigate to where you just were?
Oh yeah, so it's in the 3 dots. The modify structure is
okay.
Okay. Sorry, I just didn't understand that reference, but yeah. So the structural changes. So you have the workbenches to work on an individual cell, and you have the structural changes to work above a cell definition when you need to change something or add something. Okay.
Got it. With the topics, I see. The topics are displayed to the far left. Thank you.
Yes, and once you introduce the topic, when you want to work with this system, you might want to hide the topics column because it just takes away some space, and then you can always hide or show the topics column to get that full view of the maturity model, because obviously it squeezes the space. So if you don't need the topics, you can always hide them, but it's still there. It's just not showing on the screen. Okay. All right. I think that's what I wanted to explain to you guys today. So I will probably pass back the control to Rob to talk about why this matters. So why did we do this, other than having a lot more information for AI to digest, but what is coming building on this one. So Rob, feel free to drag the screen back.
Thanks very much, Zoltan. So yeah, so as you say, Zoltan, you know, the maturity model now is extended with what we call the atomic model, with lots more information, etc. And that really, you know, gives AI a map of how consultancy knowledge fits together. And therefore, when you want to apply it within a consultancy firm, it can mimic a lot closer how a consultant would actually make decisions or collect information, etc. Now, the first area that it has obvious applications is that in the question sets that we build out, etc. We'll be able to build out question sets not just in tell me where you think you are in terms of your capabilities, but it can say, have you got this evidence? Here's a list of things. Do you have those in place? You could ask what problems do you have at the moment, etc. And with that kind of information coming in, the AI can make an assessment against what capabilities you have, what potentially might be at risk. So it's a lot richer on the question sets. The core area that we'll embed that though is in something that we've called outcome pathways. So we'll just talk about that a little bit. So outcome pathways is you've got this knowledge, but how are you going to apply it across the consultancy engagement? So the way that we can explain this really is that if you think about a project plan, a typical project plan that somebody would engage with. So typically what you'll do up front is you'll think of some actions. You'll think, well, if we do this, it's going to deliver an outcome, etc. And off the project goes. It delivers those actions, and at the end of it, you think, okay, well, there's a bit of measurement now. Let's go and measure what we've done. And it's all assumed that you're going to get capability uplift. It's assumed that you're going to hit the outcome, and there's no real connection to it. So by actually having the models that we're putting in the product, you end up with a better way of approaching change within organizations or advice within organizations. So that's up front. You can have a conscious understanding of what the capability is. So by measurement through the maturity model, in effect, what you're doing is you're measuring the current levels of capability. Therefore, the actions that come out of it, going back to the atomic model that we talk about, can be directly advised on these are the actions that will impact that capability and improve that capability as you work towards the desired outcome. So as you go through the pathway over time with a client through your engagement, more evidence will come in that will adjust what you're doing. It will see, are you on track? Are you not? Do you need to do different things? And then at the end of the engagement, you've delivered an outcome, but it's not a surprise at that point because you've been monitoring it as you're going along, adjusting your actions, seeing what the outcome, what the evidence coming in is saying to you. So fundamentally, it creates a systemized approach, which is typically what a consultant would be thinking about as they work through a project. But at the moment, it sits in the consultant's head, so it's not scalable. So that's the theory. Now, in practice, what we're doing is thinking about this outcome pathway by breaking it down into these areas. Firstly, you'll engage up front with a framing. You'll scope the program. You'll pick up some information from the client, and from that information, you'll say, okay, well, we think these are the problems that you've got. This is what we need to do. The diagnostic is typically what we have as an assessment, but we'll show you in a second. We're extending that so it becomes a lot richer. So that's where you baseline not only the capabilities, but you might need to baseline KPIs and say this is our starting point, and then from that you create a roadmap, you push into change, etc. So that's really what we're talking about an outcome pathway. So you can see that the AX will extend its functionality much more into program and change management based on the advice because of this information that it can gather. The other thing just to bring to mind is that we're thinking of this on 3 different levels. We've got at the bottom, you've got the AX system. So this is what we've just showed you with the atomic model, what gets embedded in there and how that can use advice. The consultant will use that, but it's also the client experience as well. So though you probably recall that we've mentioned that we're launching our AX portal. So the first iteration of that is available, but that will be built out a lot more. So the engagement with a client is not just a consultant sitting in front of them. They're left with a portal which they can access at any point to see where they are on a program and get information from. And that's how it will fit together as a pathway. So I'll just give you a bit of a taster of what this is likely to look like, so it makes it a bit more concrete. Now, what we're working on, as I said, is the development of this type of pathway. So this is in one spot where you can manage an engagement from the initial, as I said, the initial framing through to the execution of a program and then measurement of the outcome of that program. I'm not going to go through this prototype in a lot of detail, but I'll just pull out the main salient points for you. So if we first go out, 10,000 foot view of it, what does this look like over time? So this dashboard here that will become available is then showing the cycle from problem identification, which through to we've created a baseline through diagnostics. So there's a summary here. But the main point that it then segues into is how can you actually then manage improvement over time for the client once you've actually engaged with the program. So this is where we'll end up in about 3-4 months time. We'll have all of this functionality working, and bit by bit we'll pull it out to you. So here, for instance, instead of doing just a point in time assessment, what you might end up with is the ability to run repeated assessments, so you can track them over time. You can display what the capability is that's changing. You might have a particular capabilities categories in focus. These are the ones that we're focusing on right now. And then from those, you'd be able to then see further information of what you're doing with that, what's happening, what's next, etc. on this dashboard. This starts to show the view that we can create when we've connected in the product book what capabilities drive what outcomes. So that's available right now, so we can start surfacing that information. So here, for instance, on a program, the primary outcome might have been defined as, in this case, reduce senior dependency. This is an example of a consultant. How do you improve a consultancy? But there could be other outcomes which you could see could be focused by different capabilities. You also end up within the platform with the ability to capture KPIs, and these KPIs, again from the product book, are identified as this is how we measure the outcome. So each outcome can have different capabilities that evidence it, and over time you can then see that maybe there's changes, etc., for the client. And the last point is that we'll build into this pathway the ability to for the AI to identify for every change in a KPI, there could be a financial return behind it. So that will allow the platform to automatically say, based on our measurement over time, at the last checkpoint we measured this was the change. You can actually demonstrate back to a client over time what the changes in value is that you're delivering as you deliver it, as well as at the end of the program. So that's a 10,000 foot view of where we're going and what we're going to end up with. Today, what we're focused on is the 3 parts of the process, from what we call framing. So this is where you're going to talk to the customer and scope, through to diagnostics, and then creation of a roadmap. So just to say, the diagnostic part is what we do at the moment with like group assessment. So we can extend that. The framing part is putting a starting point on it, where you can scope what you're going to do. And then the roadmap is the other side of the assessment, where you actually plan out, these are the tasks now that we're going to deliver. I'll just give you a quick sense of what that might look like. I've got a demo feature here. So if we were starting at the initial framing point, what we're building here is like an interview wizard. So this would enable you or any other consultant to walk through answering questions, such as gathering information from them, knowing what previous assessments might have been done, talking to the client about problems that they've got, looking to see are there any observe problems that you're experiencing, the typical consultant interview that you might want to do up front. But equally, somebody could walk through this themselves and answer these questions. So this really shows really that you could, once you've got the knowledge embedded in a platform, the individual consultant that can deliver it doesn't have to be the most senior consultant in the firm. Anybody can start walking through this type of process. Right up front, we will also be able to link your conversation to, okay, what outcomes are you looking to do? Here we've got boundaries. This is a summary of the diagnostic. And at the end of that, you end up with the AI being able to tell you, okay, right, based on the information that we've got, this seems to be where problems are, what we need to do about it, and where we need to look. And that's great for the individual consultant, but the fundamental thing we're trying to achieve here is obviously be able to play back. So I'll just create a document, play like a document to the client, which can then summarize what they're doing. So if we just preview this document, so these are the type of document that with those kinds of interview approaches we can start creating. So this goes through as a playback for any client. Why are you doing this for them? What you'll look at. We'll connect into it also things such as the ability to have plans associated to it, etc. And therefore you can see that, you know, with that type of information of approach, plus what we've got in the product book, you end up at a point where your proposal back to your client at the initial engagement looks really strong, looks really professional, and enables you to actually sell the diagnostic in a much better way. So that would be point one. If we just walk through this a little bit further, I'll move it on to, sorry, we have to go through the workflows, to the next stage. So the diagnostic stage, which you'll be familiar with at the moment around the group assessment, will be improved. So here, for instance, we have a summary of what we picked up in the assessment, the scoping. We'll put in things like plans, so you can track how are you doing the initial diagnostic, what are you gathering and when. Here, for instance, we can turn this into a checklist as well. So this is also action planning. And the part that you'll know already about the group assessment will be improved at this stage here. So we already have this view, by the way, in our discovery projects, where you can gather different assessments together, maybe for different audiences with different question sets in against the same maturity model. And that creates a single baseline. So what we can then do with our group assessment, because we've got this extended product book with lots more information coming in, we can start providing a lot richer information as a playback within that group assessment. Here, for instance, we've got much more identification of what the problems are based on different nuances. The analysis can also be improved because we can then have breakdowns such as this, but also we'll put in drill downs to more information because you've got all this rich information in the product book, and at this point it's about how you can present it back in a very useful and meaningful way to give advice to the consultant who's doing this. The additional thing that we'll build in, though, is being able to create much richer interpretation of the results, not just this is your level of where you are, this is what you need to do to get to the next level, but the nuances of different levels or at different places. How can the AI come together like in this example, to say it looks like there's general themes across those categories, and these are the types of things. Like, for instance, in this example model, we've got senior dependency remains a scaling constraint. Evidence is captured, but it's inconsistent. Because you've got lots more information coming in, and the AI can work much more effectively to mimic what a consultant would do and think. So with that type of information, the next thing that we'll build in is okay, well, you've got all these capabilities, but how do you focus on the right capabilities to deliver a specific outcome, which is something we can't do at the moment. So for instance, here we've got different outcomes, and on this model here, it can start modeling what ones are going to give you the best results. So here, for instance, we've got some that we can say, okay, actually, well, let's pull in some different capabilities that we create in terms of our target areas that we want to focus on. This view we looked at as on the dashboard, and this then starts to say, okay, well, different outcomes that we can deliver are associated to different capabilities. So here we're building a very focused. We don't have to work on everything just to get you to from level 2 to level 3. We can target on 2 or 3 specific areas to really deliver the outcome that you require. So once we've done that, we would then build out proper recommendations from the product based on those specific things that you selected, based on the specific problems that the AI can help you identify. And then that leads to the ability to create richer outcome documents. And this is an example of an assessment template that we're looking to build. So you're used to things like about the model, overall scores, etc. But then it starts to become a little bit richer here, because what we can do within these documents, because we're aiming to share these online via the portal, etc., or via a URL link, is put in things such as interactive natures for the client to view, drill downs again, etc. And really be able to play back to the client, a very rich view of what you've assessed, what it means, etc. Here we've got cross-cutting themes, the key things the AI has been helped you identify, and also what areas need to be focused on to deliver the outcome that the client wants, etc. So within that, you can see then that what we end up with is hopefully a very rich process utilizing that new knowledge in the product book, but making it also much more engaging for both the consultant and also for the client, etc. I'll just quickly go past this workflow. Now, once you've created that proposal back, this step is about how do we create then a handoff to create a roadmap, because when you've presented to the client, this is what we did, this is the assessment we did, we've baselined some KPIs, etc., etc. They might then give you some feedback. So we want to capture that feedback at this point, with the goal of then being able to create quite a seamless flow into what we would think to be the roadmap stage. So the roadmap stage is, what do we do now specifically to create a program for our client? So here what you might do is you might want to do this in a workshop environment. So therefore we've got this view back again. So you might present it to the people in a workshop. You might be then going through, okay, this is why we've selected the things. Is there anything else that you want to include? Is that very much that iterative type of engagement that we can deliver, etc. The next stage is you end up with, okay, these are the capability areas, the categories that we're focusing on, that we've agreed. Now, what are the specific actions that come out of it? Now, the product book knows about these actions now. So I didn't show you in the previous diagnostic, actually, by the way, you can put the actions into the report. But here, this would be where you would work through and say, based on the recommendations of the AI, based on what's in your product book, what are the typical actions? You might want to add some new actions though, and you can do that at this point as well, etc. So you'd agree the actions. The next thing you'd do in a project plan is then to look at how can we sequence those actions. So this is where this part would start coming in, where what we would look at is that all of the actions that we've agreed, how do we want to sequence them, etc. You might then want to connect them as dependencies. So this is the typical, not only have we got some recommendations coming out of the maturity model, but what are we going to do about them? How do we get to the point where we've now got a plan? So without going to the end of this, I'll just show you broadly. Oh no, I have to go, sorry. Yeah, I have to go to the end.
Robert, I'm struggling to map back to the maturity model. And does this span multiple product books? Sorry.
No,
Okay.
So this is based on your individual product book. So
Okay.
yeah. So within your individual product book, that could be an AI transformation product book. It could be an IT systems product book, etc. So whichever product book you do, the data behind this will change. The advice coming out about the actions you need to take and where and to specifically improve in the required areas will all adapt and adjust based on the underlying assessment that you've done. So you end up with this very rich flow in terms of how you can apply that knowledge from the point of assessment to the point of, and now what we have is we have a specific document created with a roadmap within it, etc., that we can play back to the client. So those are the first three stages that we're working on to deliver that outcome.
And so, forgive my confusion. The actions that are here, how would they differ from the actions and symptoms, etc., that we're currently putting into that's the newly launched feature? Does this build on those, or
you have two things that happen when you're engaging with your clients.
Yeah.
Firstly, to get a quick, this is typically what we would do in this scenario, that can be pulled directly from the product book now, because you've captured that expertise. It exists. You don't have to think it through. So the product book knows that if you're at level 2 in this category, you want to go to level 3. This is what the knowledge says. But in the real world, what happens is that you'll present that back to the client. For instance, the client will, well, that's not quite right for me, or you'll know as a consultant that actually there's a few subtleties which mean that standard advice needs to be flexed a little bit. So that's where the consultant comes in. So when you work with their stakeholders in the organization, they may come up with some other things they hadn't thought about. So therefore, you need the ability in this road mapping stage to take on board feedback from the client, to adjust things, and then end up with an agreed set of actions. It's the typical thing you'll do to take a client through that process. So it doesn't just sit on the assessment says this, therefore we do this. It ends up with a much richer plan. For instance, we end up with this view of the world where it's got a full hypothesis of what we did at the beginning, what we found, etc., what the target capabilities are that we've agreed with you, how we're going to sequence our actions. I didn't show you this piece, but there's also the piece about KPIs and measurement, where you can then play back, these are the KPIs that we've baselined, and this is what we're going to focus on for you. And it can also then help you create a value for the program as well, as part of delivery of that outcome, etc. So these are the things that the changes that we've done within the product book, we can make possible now in the next couple of months as we start building the product forward. So anyway, so hopefully that's been an introduction for everybody about the direction we're going. Obviously, there's a lot here in terms of the richness that we can start delivering, but hopefully you will also see that once we've done this, what you end up with these outcome pathways is your embedded knowledge in an AI system layer for the consultancy firm that helps you do analysis, guide the client, create outputs, and also create value and deliver that value back to the client as well. So anyway, so that's the taster of what we'll be delivering with you. What we'll be doing over a period of time, of course, we'll, you know, as we come up with designs and releases, we'll be doing sessions like this or engaging each of you individually to get your feedback. But it's an exciting process that we're going on, and we look forward to working with you all on the journey. So thanks very much. So I think Zoltan, did you have anything else that you wanted to add?
No, thank you very much. That was all. Thanks for the detailed insight to the future of what's coming. If you guys have any questions, feel free to drop me an email, and I'm happy to have a one-to-one chat or send you some more materials about it. And also, please check the YouTube channel where I've uploaded a lot of videos explaining in more details what the maturity model extension is and how you can use it. Right. So thank you very much for that.